Okay, welcome to another tutorial on the VCE English, and this tutorial is about the creative response part of the English exam. And the thing is, it's not in the exam. This is something that you're going to do during the year. Okay, so for the other parts of the English VCE, you're looking at reading other authors' work and interpreting and analysing those. This particular skill is when you become the author. So the skill set that this particular element of the exam is looking at is whether you can write as an author and go through the thought process and the brainstorming that makes a good written piece of language. So one of the parts of the creative response is to write a statement of intention, and this is so that the teacher has a good idea of what your thought process is. The acronym that is often used, and which we will use here, is FLAPC, and that relates to form, language, audience, purpose, and context. So in this tutorial, what we'll do is just quickly go through each of these different parts. So let's start with form. Okay, form is obviously the type of creative piece that you're going to write. It can be expository, creative, persuasive, and so on and so on. And the way that you would write this in your statement of intention, which incidentally is only, a couple of hundred words, so you don't have a lot of space to write lots and lots and lots of information on this stuff, so it's got to be very concise and to the point, so keep that in mind. So let's have a look at some of these examples. My expository piece entitled whatever is a short article intended to be featured in a magazine called whatever it is. My expository piece is an article written as a guest writer reviewing several resources on the topic of whatever. My imaginative or creative piece is a short story called whatever, which could be published as part of a collection of similar stories, and so on and so on. Or my persuasive piece is a speech intended to be delivered at a university. So there are some examples of how you would introduce the form of your creative response. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, and here we will look at audience here. So our statement of intention must mention what the readership is. So here are some examples. Targeted at savvy youth and adults between the ages of whatever and ever. Or we could say, which could be published in a magazine for, and then whatever the audience is, auto enthusiasts, environmentalists, those interested in whatever it might be. So that's mentioning the audience there. Aimed at female readers. So targeted at, aimed at, there's something between the ages of, the age of the women in the text, so there's some parallel to what the creative response is about. Delivered to a group of, so if you're doing a speech or something like that. So that would be the audience part of your statement of intention. Okay, let's move on. Okay, and if we look at then how you would mention the language used in your creative piece, whether it's formal, informal, simple, sophisticated, the techniques that you've used and so on, maybe some of the things that you could say are, for example, the title, whatever the title is, refers to certain things, but it also implies other things. And through the use of inclusive language and personal pronouns, I aim to create a connection with the audience. So that's the kind of language which is being used. The piece that I've written contains a play on words to gain audience attention, and I have included quotes and statistical evidence to suggest there is much to be learned in this area. So the type of language that was used. I have included various quotes from the text in the voice of my heroine, and I refer to symbols, such as whatever they are, which represent certain ideas, such as whatever they are. Okay, so just discovering the language used in your creative piece. I used questions to signpost my arguments and a direct and formal tone to portray an authoritative stance supported by statistical evidence to support my key arguments. That would be if you were doing a speech. Okay, so there's some idea of how you might present the language choices for your statement of intention. Okay, let's move on again. We next come to the purpose of your creative piece, which is the contention or the argument, the thesis or the key message that you want your audience to take away. And here are some examples of how you might express that in your statement of intention. My purpose is to highlight the link between whatever subject you're talking about. My piece is designed to inform the audience about whatever it is, and more specifically, something else, and how it relates to the key ideas surrounding the original text. My piece was written to reveal more about whatever the topic was. And the aim of whatever it is, the speech, is to persuade my audience that something is that whatever it is something we can learn to control and embrace in our life. So those are just some examples of how you might express the purpose in your statement of contention. Okay? Okay, and the last part of the statement of intention is the context, which is the idea behind what you're writing about. So here you might express this in your intention as I have drawn inspiration from, and then whatever the texts are, discussing how, and then whatever the topic is about. Or you could say, I compared the examples of whatever it is, who revealed something, with something else, or somebody else who demonstrated whatever it is, to illustrate that, and then something that has obviously been the consequence of those two things. So another way of expressing it, I based my key character on whatever it is to illustrate how something happens, and to explore this notion, my protagonist portrays, and then whatever it is. I have referred to examples of X, X, Y, Y, which are valuable lessons to be learned, and it illustrates why Z, Z occurs in various contexts. And you can see here in these sentences, you're comparing things, and then you have the consequence, or you have the reason why. So follow that kind of template for when you're explaining your context. Okay, now let's try and put all of this together in an example statement of intention. Okay, so here's just an example of what you might say for a statement of intention. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll just highlight these things here. So form, sort of, my creative piece is a short story called Chaos, which parallels other literary works studying social dynamics in the face of conflict. And, okay, and then we go to the idea of audience. As such, is aimed at students of this topic. Okay, we can mention purpose. Yeah, the purpose is to further examine how human behavior can quickly unravel in the face of conflict. Okay, and I think when we come to, let's have a look at some context. And this is where we say, in an isolated biosphere habitat set on the planet Mars, my protagonist is based on the character John Proctor from Arthur Miller's play The Crucible, who seeks redemption for a serious error of judgment after certain events lead to conflict and chaos inside the habitat. Okay, so that's where we talk about the context, the language. I have included several quotes from The Crucible, which I express as the voice of my protagonist. I also refer to the symbol of a crucible in the biosphere in parallel to the symbol used in both The Crucible and the Year of Wonders. Okay, so that paragraph, by no means a fantastic paragraph, but it gives you an idea of how we ensure we get all of these elements into the statement of intention, which is based on the acronym FLAPC, and it is a concise paragraph Okay, and again, to remind you, this is all about the thought process behind being an author. It's how you have to think as an author when you are going to write something. You don't just sit down and start writing without any thought behind it. You have a certain amount of thinking, brainstorming, and planning to do about all these different elements in your written piece or your creative piece. So that's what this statement of intention is about, to show your teacher you can go through the thought process as an author. Okay, we'll do one more tutorial on the kind of things that you can look for when you're actually writing the piece, but for now that's the statement of intention. Okay, thanks very much.